The Myrtles Plantation is a historic home and former plantation in St Francisville, Louisiana, that was built by General David Bradford and is believed to be one of America's most haunted homes in the United States. The house is reputedly built over an ancient Tunica Indian burial ground where the ghost of a young Native American woman has been seen. The plantation is apparently home to at least 12 ghosts, where it is reported that in its history at least 10 homicides occurred in the house. The original house was built in 1796 and has 22 rooms spread over 2 floors. The large entry hall runs the length of the house. The flooring and most of the windows in the house are original. The main rooms of the house are found to the right of the hall. The second floor features 5 bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, and the largest bedroom is known as the Judge Clark Woodruff Suite. To the rear of the main house is the oldest structure on the grounds, known as the General Store, which is where General Bradford lived while the main house was being built. The Myrtles Plantation sits on 600 acres and was named Laurel Grove. Bradford lived there alone for several years until President John Adams pardoned him for the role in the Pennsylvania Whiskey Rebellion in 1799. He then moved his wife Elizabeth and their 5 children to the plantation from Pennsylvania. When Bradford passed in 1808, his widow Elizabeth continued running the plantation until 1817, when she handed the management to Clark Woodruff, one of Bradford's former law students. Woodruff had married their daughter, Sarah Matilda, and had 3 children. It is believed that Woodruffs had a slave called Chloe, where it is claimed that Clark Woodruff had forced Chloe into being his mistress. Another story involving Chloe was that at one time she was listening in at a keyhole and learned news of Clark Woodruff's business and other secret dealings. Chloe was unfortunately caught, and one of her ears was cut off, and she wore a green turban to hide it. It is claimed that Chloe baked a cake containing oleander leaves, which are extremely poisonous, and where it is suspected that she was getting revenge on the Woodruffs. But her plan backfired when only Sarah and her 2 daughters ate the cake and all passed from the poison. A mirror located in the house supposedly holds the spirits of Sarah Woodruff and 2 of her children. According to custom, mirrors are covered after death, but legend says that after the poisoning of the Woodruffs, this particular mirror was overlooked. The uncovered mirror reportedly trapped the spirits of Sarah and her children, who are occasionally seen or leave handprints in the mirror. Chloe was then allegedly hanged by the other slaves and thrown into the Mississippi River as punishment. But like many historical stories, there is doubt to this one, as there is no record of the Woodruffs owning a slave named Chloe or any other slaves. That Sarah and her 2 daughters were not poisoned but instead succumbed to yellow fever. However, there might be some facts to the story of Chloe, as a young woman wearing a green turban has been seen haunting the plantation. When Elizabeth Bradford passed in 1831, Clark Woodruff and his surviving daughter Mary Octavia moved to Covington, Louisiana, and left a caretaker to manage the plantation. In 1834, Woodruff sold the plantation to Ruffin Gray Sterling, where he and his wife, Mary Catherine Cobb, undertook extensive remodeling of the house, almost doubling the size of the former building, and filled it with imported furniture from Europe. During this period, the name was changed to the Myrtles, after the myrtles that grew in the vicinity. Sterling passed in 1854 and left the plantation to his wife. During the Civil War, the house was ransacked by Union soldiers, and that 3 of the soldiers were slain in the house. Supposedly, there is a bloodstain in the doorway, roughly the size of a human body, that cannot be cleaned. The Myrtles amazingly survived the American Civil War, but unfortunately, most of its furnishings and expensive accessories were looted. In 1865, Mary Cobb Sterling hired William Drew Winter to help manage the plantation, but the family fortune was lost in the aftermath of the war due to it being tied up in Confederate money, and she was forced to sell the plantation in 1868, but was able to buy it back 2 years later. In 1871, William Drew Winter was shot on the porch of the house and staggered inside the house and passed trying to climb the stairs, where he collapsed on the 17th step of the stairs. Apparently, some guests have claimed to have seen his ghost staggering and crawling up the stairs and stopping on the 70th step. Other visitors and employees in the hotel occasionally hear his last staggering footsteps. In 1880, Mary Cobb Sterling passed and the plantation was inherited by his son Stephen. But the plantation was heavily in debt and Stephen was eventually forced to sell it in 1889. In 1891, the plantation changed hands several times and was later purchased by Harrison Milton Williams. In the early part of the 20th century, the land around the house was divided among the heirs of Harrison Milton Williams, and in the 1950s, the house itself was sold to a Marjorie Munson. When Marjorie purchased the property, she noticed strange hauntings happening around the home. Marjorie lived at the property until the 1970s, where it changed hands on several occasions. In the 70s, it was purchased by James and Frances Kermeen Myers, who ran the plantation property as a bed and breakfast. The Meyer family would themselves experience ghostly events at the plantation and wrote a book titled The Myrtles Plantation, naming it as the most haunted house in America, where the book explores the dark history of the house and the ghostly sightings. The plantation is also reportedly haunted by a young girl who passed in 1868. Despite being treated by a local voodoo practitioner, she supposedly appears in the room in which she passed and has been seen attempting to practice voodoo on people sleeping in the room. In 2002, Unsolved Mysteries filmed a segment about the hauntings at the plantation, where the production crew regularly experienced technical difficulties. Over the years, many other documentary crews have visited the Myrtles, including The Ghost Hunters in 2005, Ghost Adventure, and Most Terrifying Places in America.